Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome to Front and Center year-end episode, the best of Front and Center. I'm your host, Jerome Toledo. Join us as we focus on significant developments in the Philippines this 2025. Issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. You can watch this special episode on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can hear this episode on our audio streaming via Evox PBS receiver app. Also, we are broadcasting this program on our shortwave broadcast on the following frequencies: 12.020 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.665 MHz. Join us here on Front and Center year-end episode, the best of Front and Center. At the start of the year, rumors circulated on Philippine social media platforms regarding the spread of a disease of international concern called human metapneumovirus influenza. This influenza is a common flu that arises during winter months. The original social media post circulated points directly to China. And the Chinese embassy in Manila denies this, so the Philippine Health Department. In our interview with a spokesperson of the Department of Health Assistant Secretary Albert Domingo dated January 5, 2025, he dismissed the rumors as he called out the post a form of disinformation. He pointed out that a careful and deliberate review of information must be exercised, specifically when it comes to reading information on health. Assistant Secretary Domingo stated that people must verify information through verified sources like the media and from all social media channels of the Health Department. Here's Health Spokesperson Assistant Secretary Albert Domingo.
We are on the watch for many health concerns. In fact, we are quite surprised that everyone is looking at China when the DOH is more concerned on developments about bird flu. You will be able to see in other countries that there are supposed mutations, although isolated, and for us that is something more pressing. But be that as it may, it is also concerning that information is spreading just like a virus. And in this case, we don't refer to any particular country until it is verified. In this new era of post-pandemic possible misinformation, that particular website or Facebook page that you referred to was figured in an earlier incident of misinformation. I'm referring to late in the 2024 fourth quarter, where the weather was supposedly, I think we're referring to the same site, this supposed weather site, which is not a real weather site. So we do not want to dignify the same particular website or page that has been established to be someone who posts misinformation. The best thing to do, the best remedy right now for the public would be to always check their sources. The official DOH pages on the internet are the following. On the web, it's www.doh.gov.ph. On Facebook, it is DOH.gov.ph. Look for the blue verified check mark. On X, it's DOH.gov.ph. Also look for the verification check mark. And I think the verification on X for government sites is gray. It's not blue. And then for Instagram, it's DOH.Philippines. And for TikTok, it's DOH.gov.ph.
This year, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has expressed his support for the establishment of the Virology Institute of the Philippines. President Marcos Jr. assured the government will find ways to secure funding. Later in September, President Marcos Jr. signed Republic Act 12290, or the Virology Institute of the Philippines, into law. Here's the highlight of the interview of the program with DOST Philippine Council for Health Research and Development Executive Director Dr. Jaime Montoya in January 19, 2025.
We're very happy and pleased that no less than our President Bongbong Marcos, uh, stated his continued support to the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines. Know that the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines was in fact one of the priority bills of the president when he spoke during the State of the Nation address during the beginning of his administration. He considered this one of his priorities. So he is just walking the talk. He's saying that this priority and he's putting all the financial and resource support to the establishment of the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines.
On February 2, 2025, we had a chance to interview the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Maharlika Investment Corporation or MIC, Rafael Consing, to tell the importance of the acquisition of Maharlika Investment to Synergy and Grid Corporation or SGP. That deal is poised to give the government more influence over the country's power grid operations. It will also provide the government with board seats in both SGP and NGCP. The deal will be MIC's first investment since its inception in July 2023. Here's the highlight of that interview.
I would say extremely important. At the onset of when Maharlika was established, we made known our strategy early in the process that during its nascent stage, we were going to be steering the Sovereign Wealth Fund or the Maharlika Investment Fund as a national development fund. That means that we will be investing the capital in the Philippines. And the reason for that is, whilst there are significant opportunities abroad, the opportunities in the Philippines are just as vast, A, and B, it will be significantly more impactful when it comes to the impact to our fellow Filipinos. So, and top of this list of sectors that we've chosen to invest is basically in energy security. When we choose an investment, there are basically two things in our mind. Number one, we looked at what the Ambition to 2040 basically aims to achieve. And we then worked back and we looked at basically what the different sectors that we can invest in that could be in support of this vision. And we've decided that energy security sits on top of it. Connectivity, that would be physical and digital connectivity, being an equally important sector. Third would be resource extraction and processing. Fourth is food security. Investments around the themes of food security is going to be extremely important. Now, going back to energy security, once we've chosen these sectors, we then ask ourselves, which part of that ecosystem within the sector requires the most amount of investment? And we felt that so far as the energy sector is concerned, it would be in the rolling out of lines to ensure that we are building the energy infrastructure required, to support economic growth in the Philippines for generations to come.
In politics, lawmakers from the House of Representatives earlier in February this year filed an impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte after it gathered 215 signatures. The articles of impeachment indicated are the following: conspiracy to assassinate President Marcos, First Lady and Speaker Romualdez, malversation of 612.5 million peso confidential funds, bribery and corruption in Department of Education, unexplained wealth and failure to disclose assets, involvement in extrajudicial killings, destabilization, insurrection and public disorder, and totality of conduct as Vice President. The impeachment process happened 3 months before the midterm elections 2025. In the program last February 9, 2025, I asked the opinion from the constitutional law expert, Attorney Domingo Cayosa, regarding that action, and here's what he opined.
One, it is good for the country that the impeachment charges have been forwarded to the Senate. Because this is a matter of accountability of public officials. it's not politics, but it is accountability, because there are allegations, and in the congressional hearings that investigated the allegations of corruption, bribery, and abuse of power, we saw for ourselves that, and there were admissions and affidavits and documents tending to show that the hundreds of millions of public funds were used improperly. And there were also public statements by the Vice President threatening the First Family and the Speaker of the House. There have been also researches made that the receipts signed by persons who were allegedly received confidential or intelligence funds do not exist. Those persons do not exist. So these are already badges of corruption. So we saw this. It is important. And the Vice President claimed that Congress could not be relied upon because they are biased. They were ganging up against her. So it is important and it is helpful that the process unfolds and the case is brought to the Senate, because under our Constitution and the rule of law, it is the Senate that would determine whether or not the charges have basis, whether or not the Vice President is to be held accountable for these acts. So it is not good that it stays indefinitely with the lower house, because these are just charges and counter press releases, propaganda, counter propaganda. It is to the interest of the country that we follow through with a process that will determine whether or not those charges are true. It is also good for the Vice President because it gives her a chance to answer the charges and to defend herself. Due process. Everyone will be given due process. And then it is also very important that another body, not the accusing Congress, but the Senate, will sit as the judges. And it's very important also that the rule of law is followed. And that's why, since the Constitution provides for the process of impeachment, and the Senate itself has its own rules for impeachment cases, it is good and important that we follow through with this until the Senate decides whether the Vice President is guilty of the charges or not, and whether or not he will be removed from office and disqualified from public office under our republic.
I see.
So it will give us political stability if due process is followed, the rule of law is followed, and justice is served.
On March 11, 2025, former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte was arrested upon his return from Hong Kong trip. He was arrested by the International Police or Interpol. Former President Duterte was arrested under the International Criminal Court or ICC warrant, charging him crimes against humanity due to Duterte administration's war against drugs and the extrajudicial killings which family of victims alleges. The Duterte camp called the arrest a form of kidnapping, while the government denied the accusation. On March 16, 2025 interview, I asked the opinion of a political analyst and former Political Affairs Secretary Ronald Llamas regarding this matter. Here's what he said.
Well, first of all, this is about accountability. This is about justice. This has been several years in the making. As early as 2016 and 2017, the prosecutor of the ICC has already warned us that they were watching. They were observing the escalating numbers of extrajudicial killings. When it didn't stop, it didn't go down, they started the preliminary examination in 2017 motu proprio, which meant on their own. And then communication, evidences starting to reach the ICC from families of the victims of extrajudicial killings to Senator Trillanes and Attorney Sabio, etc., etc. So the preliminary examination meant that our country is now being investigated regarding crimes against humanity. It is country specific. After a few years, it started the preliminary investigation. Preliminary investigation meant that it is now going to be person specific who are responsible. And it was clear from the very start, it was the president himself and the architect of Tokhang who were implicated in these crimes against humanity, Senator Bato. So what happened right now is the end of the preliminary investigation, the release of the international warrant, which was given to the Interpol for implementation. And that's what we saw. So in one sense, as the Catholic Bishops' Conference statement stated, this is about accountability, a long overdue accountability. This is not just a dynamics between the Marcos dynasty and the Duterte dynasty. It is more importantly between the Dutertes and the families of the victims. Let us not forget that. Even if there is a political dynamics in this ICC warrant of arrest, it is the culmination of a search for justice by the families of the victims. And it is wrong what the Dutertes are saying, that this is about an imperialist attack on the Dutertes.
2025 is an election year, particularly the midterm election where we are electing our senators, representatives, governors, mayors, and numerous local council officials. COMELEC, or Commission on Elections, throughout the election season assured the public about its readiness to conduct election. Days before election, I spoke with citizen armed groups, Legal Network for Truthful Election, or LENTE, and the Parish Pastoral Council on Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, regarding their preparations for the midterm elections. Here's PPCRV National Coordinator Dr. Arwin Serrano and Lente's Attorney Helen Graido. Watch.
We usually start with pre-election activities like voters registration campaign, voters education, continuing voters education. We are also involved in the Bids and Awards Committee with the procurement of important election paraphernalia and materials. We also are involved in the meetings, whether it's coordination meetings from the national up to the local level.
Yes.
We are also actively participating in COMELEC initiated activities and also election-related events. And especially now that the start of the election period in January 11 up to today, we are closely monitoring all the related activities, particularly in preparation for our May 12, 2025 elections. Our volunteers are growing in numbers because of our call for volunteers and volunteers mobilization. And we've been very active in all phases and all aspects of election. And we are very much involved as compared to other non-government organizations, which are also helping us in monitoring this election.
Since we will be conducting a purposive monitoring all throughout the nation, so that will be composed of general monitoring and a new method that we would want to deploy this elections, which is the time and motion study. So currently, we are at the tail end of recruitment of volunteers, and we are in the middle of training these volunteers. We will be conducting refresher trainings for training sessions for these volunteers because we know that they have to be equipped and they have to be very to be well versed with the tools, so we can rely on the data, and we can be sure that the data they will be providing is of good quality, which we can use for our reform work.
Meanwhile, the midterm election 2025 turned sour for administration's senatorial lineup, as majority of the candidates did not make it to top 12 senatorial that won the election last May. It did have a huge effect on the Marcos Jr.'s administration. From that moment, the shakeup was initiated, And it was initiated by President himself, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., by revamping the cabinet secretaries through courtesy resignations. I spoke with political analyst Dr. Froilan Calilong regarding the chief executive's move.
There are different angles that we need to see and that we need to really calibrate this move on the part of the president. There are several layers of implications and possible analysis that we could actually derive from this. One of which I believe is leadership consolidation. I think the call for courtesy resignations like this allows the president to reassess and potentially restructure his cabinet to ensure alignment with his administration's priorities. And I think this move will provide probably an opportunity to bring in new leaders who can drive the government's agenda more effectively. And I think this comes in the wake of the outcome of the 2025 elections. And also I think this could be partly attributed to the decreasing or to the relatively I would say decreased trust and satisfaction rating that was given to the president in the weeks before the elections. But on the flip side, we also could see that this could be a move to heighten accountability and performance. Remember that whenever we request resignations, I think what is important here is the reason behind. One of which is how we could underscore the importance of accountability among his officials. So I believe that moves like this, which is I think which comes very surprising actually, given the fact that we are already in the midway of his administration. It sends a message that performance is being closely monitored and that changes will be made if necessary in order to meet the expectations of the Filipino people. So again, we look at from the perspective of the president here, we're seeing a president that somehow listens and is responsive to the calls of the public, of the people. Also, this could be a political strategy, as this action, I think, could also serve to address any possible internal challenges within the administration in order to demonstrate responsiveness to public sentiment following the midterm elections.
We now wrap up the part 1 of our year-end episode. Part 2 of Front and Center year-end episode coming up next.
Paliwanag mo sa tao na hindi totoo yan.
Dahil ang totoo, yung totoo ang dapat ninyong malaman.
Nagkalat sa internet ang fake news
Ang
o
ginagawa
mali
ng
at
fake news, tinatakot niyo yung tao.
What they are doing is creating panic.
We say no.
Yung pagkalat ng fake news. And some of it's dangerous.
Sana iwasan po natin pag-spread ng fake news.
At di magpapakalat ng disinformation at misinformation ang kasulukuyang administrasyon.
Stop telling us fake news because you're wrong.
Para sa totoo at mapagkakatiwalaang mga balita at impormasyon, Radyo Pilipinas.
Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome back to Front and Center year-end episode with your host, Jerome Toledo. We are now on the part 2 of our year-end episode, and let me start it with the interview of the program with spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Colonel Francel Margaret Padilla, last June 16, as the Philippines and Japan conducted a joint maritime exercise in the Philippine waters in June. The exercise took place as the Reciprocal Access Agreement has been ratified and signed by both Manila and Tokyo, which will enhance defense capability of the Philippine Naval Forces. Here's Armed Forces spokesperson Colonel Padilla.
Well, for this, it means a broader strategic significance for both countries. No, this cooperative activity is just not more than just a display of maritime capability. It is also a clear manifestation of our enduring commitment, no, to uphold peace, stability and a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. Both nations, we highlight that we all want a free and open, maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Also, one of the highlights of the program for this year is the Trump administration's imposition of 20% tariff rate to the Philippines from the previous 17% tariff rate. Economic managers were in shock upon the declaration, as this is a big number and it will have significant impact on the Philippine economy. Meanwhile, in July 10 interview of the program, economist Michael Ricafort gave his thoughts on that economic measure.
Well, the initial effect would be it would become more expensive for our exports to be sold to the U.S.
Yes.
Because they're imposing a tax of 20%.
Mhm.
And, it's slightly higher compared to 17% during the first announcement by Trump last April 2.
Yeah.
Although a week after that, April 9, we suspended, paused the tariffs for 90 days, and it expired yesterday, July 9. That was a baseline tariff of 10% for everybody else. So now he reverted it back to the reciprocal tariff, but it's a bit higher at 20%, meaning to say exporters who sell to the U.S., their products will be sold 20% more because it will be imposed a 20% tax whenever it's sold to the U.S. or shipped to the U.S. So
Okay.
it's either the consumers in the U.S. and the buyers there, whether consumers or businesses, they have to pay 20% to be passed. The higher tariff would be, if it can be passed by businesses, they would do so. And if it would lead to higher prices, that could reduce the demand. Actually, the bigger headache is with our neighboring countries because their exports are much bigger than us. The exports of more developed ASEAN countries and Asian, especially ASEAN countries, they're 3 to 5 times higher than the merchandise exports of the Philippines. And they're more export dependent for their economies than us. So they may have a bigger problem and headache because of these uncertainties.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have to plan their inventories, their capacity,
That's
their
right.
new investment, expansion plans.
In July, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. went to Washington to meet with United States President Donald Trump to discuss matters on trade, defense, among other important matters. One of the highlights of the visit was the tariff negotiation of 20% that was imposed by U.S. government through President Trump. In my interview with foreign policy expert Professor Renato De Castro last July 21, he said that the Trump-Marcos meeting would not be a dramatic one and will focus on strengthening alliance and negotiating the 20% tariff. Here's Professor Renato De Castro.
I'm just referring to and basically going back to the statement of our ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Jose Bates Romualdez, who said, don't expect anything dramatic or new in this bilateral summit meeting. Rather, it will be simply a matter. It's a matter of reviewing what, of course, had been accomplished in the past. So, of course, you have dramatic developments that happened in the Philippine-U.S. relation, of course, during the Biden administration. You have, of course, the reassertion of the importance of the alliance then, reflected by the decision of both sides to increase the number of enhanced defense cooperation agreement sites in 2023. Then you have, of course, the revival of a 2+2. Then, of course, more recently, you have the deployment of American strategic weapon systems. Like, for example, the medium-range capability Typhoon system, and of course, more recently, the Nemesis. So you have these dramatic changes going on in the alliance, and chances are, of course, and most probably, that what the two sides will do would be to review and possibly see what else could be done in ensuring, of course, strengthening the alliance in terms of what Secretary Hegseth mentioned, strengthening the alliance deterrence capability. The other aspect there, I think the more thorny and more challenging is the issue of the tariffs.
Yes.
So you remember when President Donald Trump announced Liberation Day, the tariff for the Philippines was set at 17%. Then just, I think a couple of days later, just last week, President Trump sent a letter to President Marcos saying that the tariff for the Philippines will be at 20%. And of course, just a few days ago, Indonesia was able to cut a deal for Indonesia to have 19% tariff. So this is something that both sides would have to discuss.
Also in July, the country has experienced severe flooding due to onslaught of typhoons and tropical cyclones that hit the country, particularly in Metro Manila, the nation's largest urban region. One of the reasons for the flooding is the improper waste disposal, aside from the botched flood mitigating or control facilities, which was called out by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. in his State of the Nation address in July. In my interview with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources Assistant Secretary Jackie Caancan last July 25, I asked her if there were any challenges on the implementation of the Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. Here's her answer.
Definitely, throughout the years of implementation of this law, we have several programs to enforce it nationwide and locally. First and foremost, the national and local governments have ongoing programs and activities relative to the proper solid waste management. So continued collaboration and technical guidance is provided by the national government, which is through the DNR and the Environmental Management Bureau to the local government units in promoting the adoption of best practices. So by way of technical assistance to the LGU, we are doing the coordination so that on the part of the local government units, they have also been enacting local ordinances to complement this Republic Act 9003.
The Department of Budget and Management has announced that Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, will receive a 53 billion pesos subsidy for 2026 after it got a zero subsidy this year. The subsidy from the government will ensure that PhilHealth will increase its benefits and expand health packages for members. Meanwhile, let's hear the President and Chief Executive Officer of PhilHealth, Dr. Edwin Mercado, as he assured that there will be no premium rate hike as they got subsidy for the next year.
Wala kaming pinroject na magtataas ng premium rates. Yung nakasaad kasi sa batas, nasa maximum na tayo nung ating current na 5% of the compensation or the basic salary of our members. So wala tayong itataas pa doon sa cap na yon. At ang ginagawa namin, of course, is efficiency within the corporation. At saka tinitingnan din namin na maging mas efficient doon din sa mga koleksyon ng premium doon sa atin namang mga direct sector members o yung mga nasa formal sector. Kasi siguro naman nararamdaman na ng ating mga kababayan na marami ng benepisyo at hindi lamang pag ikaw ay nagkasakit, kasi nga ang dami nagsasabi ba't kami maghuhulog ng premium kung hindi naman namin nagagamit. Hindi po ganun ang konsepto po ng social health insurance. Tayo po ay sama-samang nag-aambag para po tayo ay magtulungan dahil hindi po natin matatansya kung kailan tayo mangangailangan. Kaya nga po ito insurance. At kahit po wala tayong sakit, pinalawig na po namin yung benepisyo na maging preemptive o maging gamutin na natin bago pa magkasakit ang ating miyembro. At yun nga po yung ating nilunsad na bagong programa na kung tawagan po ay Yamang Pangkalusugan o YAKAP.
Before September ends, a major earthquake struck northern Cebu province, costing the lives of more than 100 people and injuring thousands of Cebuanos. Not only lives were affected, but the source of livelihood as well, particularly in the tourism sector. Last October 6, I had the chance to speak with Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco. Here's the portion of the interview with Secretary of Tourism Cristina Frasco.
To manage expectations, it will not be immediate because the law, as I understand it, especially for heritage sites, requires the thorough assessment by both the National Historical Commission as well as the National Commission on Culture and the Arts. And TIEZA is there to provide funding assistance from the portion of the travel taxes that it collects under the Tourism Act. Due to the massive extent of the damage, we've also sought the help of the DPWH so that we can work together with them, especially where we're not able to fund the entirety of the damaged sites, no.
Right.
So per my discussion with Tiesa, at the minimum, it will take around 3 to 6 months to conduct the thorough assessment of the damage, and subsequent to that will be all of the related procurement processes. So I honestly don't think that repairs can be done to its fullest within the year. But we're hopeful that at the very least, repairs can begin within the term of the president.
And to wrap up our year-end episode, let's hear a portion of the interview with the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources Region 7 Assistant Regional Director Eddie Llamedo as he talks about the environmental laws violated by the developer of Monterrazas de Cebu. The said property was blamed for the massive flooding brought by Typhoon Tino in Cebu City, which inundated the city with whitish mud.
Our regional executive director, Lieutenant Sala, constitute or composed a joint investigation team on November 6. No, so November 6, there was a meeting, virtual meetings with Mines and Geosciences Bureau, Environmental Management Bureau, Penro Cebu, and Central Cebu City, and that team went to Monterrazas on a Friday. So there was an investigation, and part of the team was a representative or representatives from Cebu City government and Barangay LGU, Guadalupe.
All right.
So after the investigation on November 6 and 7, there was also a survey from the communities within the Monterrazas just to get an into a response whether they are affected by the flooding. And during that time, during the interview, these were the findings, no, that were gathered by the joint inspection team. Number one, because we had a pre-inventory last October 2022, and during the October 2022 tree inventory, there were 745 trees that within the property of Monterrazas. The total property is 140 hectares. But Monterrazas requested for a tree inventory as part of their application for amended environmental compliance certificate.
Okay.
So there was an inventory and 745, and right now they found out that out of 745, only 11 that were accounted for. So meaning there was a violation of Section 77 of Presidential Decree 705 of the Forestry Code of the Philippines. So the second major findings is of the total 33 ECC, meaning because there was an amended ECC issued by ENB 7, and of the amended ECC, there are 33 conditions.
All right.
Of the 33 conditions,
all right.
10 conditions were violated.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Assistant Regional Director Llamedo. So, we're talking about itong 33 environment compliance certificates.
Compliance certificate conditions.
That was issued to that developer.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And at the same time, you mentioned
of the 33, 10 conditions were violated.
Okay.
Okay. EMB, Environmental Management Bureau, who is part of the team, issued a notice of violation with stoppage order on November 10. So the company, Monterrazas, was issued a notice of violation for the 10 ECC violations, and they're going to hold right now, there's an ongoing technical conference because based on our existing laws, sir, on Presidential Decree 1586 on the Philippine Environmental Impact Statement System Law, each violation has a penalty of 50,000 pesos.
Okay.
And that's for the administrative penalty. And also, part of the 10, because there are 33 and 10 violations, one of the violations is the discharge, failure to secure a discharge permit, which is also a separate law, which is the Clean Water Act,
Yeah.
or the Republic Act 9275, which is also part. So meaning to say, there are now 3 violations of existing environmental laws that Monterrasas has violated.
Right.
The
right.
Forestry Code of the Philippines, the Presidential Decree 705, it also has the corresponding charges. Corresponding charges will be filed against them. Second is the PD 1586, and the third is the Republic Act 9275.
You have just heard and watched the Front and Center year-end episode, the best of Front and Center for 2025. We hope that the year 2026 will be filled of joy and greatness as we witness history unfolds next year. As the quote goes, tomorrow is the first blank page of a 365-page book, right? A good one. That's from Brad Paisley. And from all of us here in the Front and Center, with our producer Erwin Peñano, Master Control Technicians Susan Aison and Milo Junela, Warcast Operators Justino Cias and Hiro Lucero, and audio streaming Mr. Leo Magpayo. This is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time here on Front and Center year-end episode, we wish you all a blessed and great 2026 ahead.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.